Hey everyone, it's Thursday, May 29th. I'm Benit Braich here in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Here are your top stories this afternoon. Well, an investigation is underway into a deadly crash near Horseshoe Bay yesterday afternoon. 3 people were hit by a TransLink bus. A 4-year-old boy was killed. The child's mother is in critical condition, and a friend of hers is listed in stable condition. It's unclear what led to the collision. Police say the child was pronounced dead at the scene. And here's one witness describing what he saw.
I live in North Van, but I got off the BC ferry and I was going to get the second 257, and I like it when the first 257 goes. So I saw it leave from the spot, and then it suddenly did a right turn, and then I heard all the screaming and everything. So I kept walking towards the bus, and then I saw the lady pinned underneath the bus.
Police are asking for witness accounts, dash cam, or other video footage. TransLink CEO says the Transit Authority is heartbroken by the tragic event, and it's working with police in its investigation. West Vancouver's mayor is also expressing profound sadness for those impacted by the tragedy. A majority of MLAs have backed a private member's bill that prevents provincial politicians from also serving on local governments. So MLAs can no longer hold provincial office while also serving as a local councillor or school board member, according to a new law. And NDP MLA Darlene Rochford put forward a private member's bill to ban so-called double dipping.
This is something that shouldn't be allowed. We should make sure we're ensuring that all people are giving their 110% and closing that loophole for when you're an MLA in the province of British Columbia, similar to other provinces across the country.
It means one Conservative MLA will have to resign her council seat once the new law receives royal assent. So that's BC Conservative MLA Misty Van Popta, who represents the Langley-Walnut Grove riding. She currently also sits as the Township of Langley councillor. She says that she can do both jobs. The NDP says the 2 jobs gave Popta a combined salary of nearly $190,000 a year, making her the highest paid provincial politician aside from the Premier. Also a reminder, starting tomorrow at noon, there will be open fire bans on many coastal areas of the province. There are exceptions for Haida Gwaii. This includes Category 1 and Category 2 open fires. Campfires are still allowed, but those must be no more than half a meter high by half a meter wide. Cooking stoves also allowed. The BC Wildfire Service says that this is to reduce the risk of wildfires, and that ban will stay in place until October 31st or until it's rescinded. Okay, and in Smithers got quite a surprise today. Skateboarding legend Tony Hawk is in town as the community celebrates the opening of a brand new skate park. Here's a little message from the skater himself.
Hey, what's up, Smithers? It's Tony Hawk. Someone told me there's a skate demo happening at your new park. That's pretty cool. I may have to check it out.
And it's the grand opening of the Smithers Skate Park. The Skate Park Society says it's thankful to the community for rallying behind the project for years. And a group of pro athletes are sliding by to open up the park. It's a really fun moment for the community. I saw some comments like, dreams really do come true. Parents also saying their kids are so stoked. So fun times there. And that's what we have for you so far this afternoon. I'm Benit Braich. You're watching CBC News BC. Stay with us. BC Today is coming up next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Williams Lake City Council say public disorder has gotten, quote, chaotic, and it wants to impose a state of local emergency. We'll hear from a city councilor and we'll ask you, does street disorder warrant a local emergency? Plus, it's been 1 month since the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival tragedy. I spoke with a victim who spent 10 days in hospital and faces a long recovery ahead. And more public washrooms are coming to Vancouver. So do BC cities need better access to clean and safe public washrooms? That's after 12:30. Welcome to BC Today. Williams Lake City Council wants to impose a state of local emergency, and this is over an increase in street disorder and violence. They cite a sharp increase in assaults, arson, and vandalism in the downtown core. Now, BC's Minister of State for Community Safety and Integrated Services, Terry Young, was asked about this yesterday at the legislature in Victoria.
I reached out to the mayor of Williams Lake this morning. We want to have a direct conversation with city and mayor and council to understand the challenges they face on the streets. And we also had been contacting the RCMP to offer our support. Just to say that the province has been supporting many different programs in Williams Lake the last couple of years, prioritizing enforcement team initiatives, adding resources to local RCMP. In July, in 2 months, we're going to add 40 emergency shelter beds.
We're going to hear in a moment from the Williams Lake councillor who put forward this motion to enact a state of local emergency. We also want to hear from you. Do you think these concerns around public safety warrant a state of local emergency? And do municipalities like yours need more resources and tools to deal with those kinds of concerns? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And you can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now from Williams Lake is Councillor Scott Nelson. Hi, Councillor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
Why a state of local emergency?
Well, it's important to have a state of emergency right now because we've had a dramatic escalation in terms of vandalism, in terms of arson. There's been a fire just about every single night in the downtown core. There are people that are so high and so drugged out that they don't even know where they are. One of the homeless people caught themselves on fire last week and got third-degree burns. It's just become uncontrollable for municipalities at this point in time, and the community has said we need action. We need to get people with mental illnesses and people that are so high off the streets, not only for themselves but for the protection of the community. So we had to dig inside the toolbox of what's available to us, and the state of emergency will provide us that opportunity to help ensure that at the end of the day, we've got extra tools to protect the community and provide a much more higher level degree of public safety.
When I think of a state of emergency, I think of, what's happening in Manitoba right now, or in parts of BC, certainly, when we've dealt with wildfires, and there has to be that immediate evacuation, imminent threat to public safety. Those are the kinds of things we think about when we hear state of local emergency. Is this really warranted in those cases where you have, those concerns, but they're not necessarily as widespread as these critical emergencies that we're seeing?
It's critical to the point that when you've got people that are doing things that are not in their normal state of mind and they're in your community, and at any given point they can snap and they can turn on somebody in the community. Just this morning, I was driving to work and I came across the fire department and they were putting out a fire at our largest seniors care home facility in the downtown core. They lit both garbage cans on fire, like the large bins on fire, and vandalized the fence. So the fire department came and put that out. There's 60 or 70 seniors inside this one building alone.
Okay.
So the escalation of and how it has occurred so fast and so rapid, we just don't have the resources. This week and last week, we had the highest call rate in the RCMP in the history of Williams Lake. The RCMP had to assist the ambulances to help on the overdoses that was occurring in our community.
Okay.
So we're at the point right now where people are going to die because we just don't have the resources in our community.
And there is a public health emergency over overdoses, right?
Correct. And we also don't have the resources available in our community to provide the wraparound services. And that's really the level and the concern that we're at is that when somebody is taken in, they're let back out, that they're not put into the full wraparound services. And that's the real concern is that they're back onto the streets and they're ODing here in the same day. I was talking to a couple of homeless the other day. Some of them will do it 2 and 3 times a day and will end up in the hospital. And so the problem that we've got is that they're on the street and they're lighting fires in the middle of the night, causing problems. So it's become very, very concerning from the community. The community is scared.
Councillor, I'm sorry to jump in. I'm just wondering, I want to go back to the fire at the seniors facility. In that case then, so the firefighters came to put it out. What would a state of local emergency do that would be different?
Well, what a state of emergency would do would take these individuals that are lighting these fires, and we would be doing a clean sweep across the community. We believe that it's a targeted... What does a clean
sweep mean? What's a clean sweep?
A clean sweep means that if you have mental issues and you're picked up in the downtown core, the police will not take you to jail. They will take you to the hospital and ask for an involuntary check. So there are a number of people that we know are in the downtown core that are constantly let back out that are not in the wraparound services. So what we're asking for is to remove the people and put them into key programs to assist them. That's why we're trying to use a state of emergency, because it will provide us with the extra powers to be able to go into the homeless shelters as well and ensure that the individuals that need these types of enforcements, it gets done.
Let's take some calls now. This is an issue that I imagine many people relate to around British Columbia. My guest is Williams Lake Councillor Scott Nelson. They are seeking to enact a state of local emergency to allow the city to use that tool to deal with issues around street disorder, public disorder, and violence. And they say there has been an escalation in those concerns. So asking you, what do you think? Do those public safety concerns warrant a state of emergency? And do you think municipalities need more tools and resources to deal with issues around public disorder? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And let's go to Port Hardy, and Michael is calling us. Hi, Michael. What are your thoughts on this?
Hi, I really appreciate you taking my call. My thoughts on this are that we live in a corporate political environment that ultimately allows foreign investors to buy up a lot of our housing, essentially causing the housing crisis that we have. In my own small community of Cole Harbour, there's one fellow from Hong Kong that owns 6 houses in my own community, thus creating, and they sit mostly empty, thus creating a homeless crisis. We have a lot of social disorder because of the financial pressures of, for lack of any other way to put it, we're being economically extorted by our corporate political environment into poverty. There's nowhere near enough housing for people. And that's why we have so many people on the streets, and people on the streets are living in mental, emotional distress. And so they turn to drugs and alcohol to try and feel better.
And so what do you think then? I mean, when you talk about foreign investment, we've had the federal government and the province, right? The foreign investors ban from Ottawa, from the province. There have been things like the speculation and vacancy task. So they're trying to deal with those issues that you've raised. But what do you think a state of emergency would do for Port Hardy, for example?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it might help force the district into providing more social housing for the people. We need more co-op housing built for low-income families. And so long as we provide enough critical supports for people and prevent them from falling through the socioeconomic cracks, that this will ultimately prevent these social disorder problems that we're having on the streets.
Michael, really good to hear from you. Thanks so much. That's Michael in Port Hardy. So as we say, these are issues that people around the province can relate to and can comment on. And my guest is Williams Lake Councillor Scott Nelson. What do you think of that then? You know, does a state of emergency, are you at this point, because those root causes, those root issues around lack of housing haven't been addressed?
I agree with Michael that that is certainly part of the key wraparound kind of main pillars inside of full wraparound services. But let me be honest, you could not take the individuals that we're talking about right now and put them into a housing facility. They would burn it down. They would destroy it. And that's part of the problem is that they need to get into a treatment facilities that will help them get better. And then as they go through that treatment facilities, you would bring in additional wraparound services and get them into housing projects. But to take them and put them immediately into a housing project, they would just honestly, quite honestly destroy it. So that would be part of the long-term process of wraparound service. And I agree with Michael on that in terms of being able to utilize that as part of the pillars.
Now, so you're talking really about things like mental health issues. I just want to bring up some of the comments that we've heard from people who disagree with this or who have pushed back. Megan McDermott is the policy director with the BC Civil Liberties Association.
It's really unlikely to be actualized only because this is not the way that our emergency legislation is designed in Canada. The legal thresholds for that are very, very high, and they tend to be designed for natural disasters or public health emergencies or really kind of political, like terrorist type acts that are really, really extreme.
Okay, so again, in this case, is this a possibly overshooting when it comes to trying to deal with the local issues that you have there?
So let me use 3 or 4 key examples. We've gone into homeless camps now, and we have found machetes and knives and weapons. We are getting a fire a day in our community. We have had 3 or 4 of our buildings burned down, one specifically tied to arson. We have had long-term businesses move out of the community because of the homeless shelter. So when you talk about safety and you talk about the opportunities of rights and freedoms, it goes both ways. There are individual rights for the individuals and the homeless and the people with mental incapacitations. But at the same time, people still should have that freedom on the other side in terms of being able to live freely, unfearful of whether the house is going to be burned down, or whether they're walking down the street and they get pushed into a car or attacked. So that fundamental freedom and human rights issues flows both ways. I support it, but at the same time, people can't live their lives in fear every day. You can't be scared to go downtown with your children, concerned that you're going to be jumped or attacked, or go home and think that your business is going to be burnt down or your house is going to be burned down, because people that have got mental issues are running around your community unchecked by the BC government or by the federal government. It is simply wrong. And that's what's putting pressure on politicians and putting pressure on the systems, is people want to feel safe and they want action, and they want action now to ensure that their families are safe in communities.
When you say unchecked, though, is that really fair? There are people who are followed by the Mental Health Act, mental health professionals. There is a plan to increase involuntary care that the province has put in place. But isn't there that provincial process that's already in place? Is it the role of a municipal government to do, as you say, a clean sweep of people who are suffering from mental illness? Oh, Councillor? I think we've just lost our councillor there. We're going to try and reconnect with Councillor Scott Nelson from Williams Lake as we ask you, do you think that these issues of public disorder warrant a state of local emergency? 1-800-825-5950-604-669-3733. I think we have him back. I do see him on the screen. Councillor Nelson, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I apologize. Live.
No, not
sorry,
at
the
all.
question was. The question was.
Yes, is it the role, let me go back in my brain too, is it the role of a municipal government to do essentially a clean sweep, as you say, when we have the province doing things like expanding involuntary care?
You know, I've been involved for municipal politics for 20 some odd years. Never in my life did I ever think that I would be looking to call a state of local emergency in Williams Lake. But we have seen such a drastic, unparalleled change in the last couple of years, and the call from the public for making their community safer has never ever has been as loud as it is right now. So I think it's justified, and I think people want action. That they've heard about a lot of talk about what's going to happen, but people are very concerned and very scared right now. And I got it. I understand that. I've got family. I've got kids. I got neighbors. People are concerned. So as a locally elected officials, we have those tools and we have the opportunity to use them. I think that this certainly kind of sets the standards of making sure that your community is safe.
Erin is our next caller now in the cusp. Hi, Erin. Welcome.
Hi.
Yay.
Hi.
Your thoughts
Thank
on
you
a state
for
of local
taking
emergency? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. My apologies.
So I would just like for him to expand on the idea of, because I don't know if I misheard, it kind of came quick that there'd be this clean sweep, which I think is not a great term to use, but bringing them to the health center for involuntary checks. Is that exactly what he was saying? Because in the end, if you're doing a clean sweep of a downtown and bringing them to a hospital with like workers that, you know, don't have, like in a small hospital, we don't have security, and you're going to bring them to a hospital. Is that what he's saying? They'd all just come to the hospital, put the workers in danger. And is that really the best solution?
Erin, and you're a healthcare worker yourself, right?
Yes, I'm not a nurse.
Okay.
I work with rehabilitation, but we've had a few code whites over the last month,
What
which
does
are
that
very
mean?
scary.
What's a code white?
Oh, it's just somebody just uttering threats.
That must have been scary.
Yeah, so scary situations like that. And of course, the poor nurses that are working, they have to deal with that. Now, just imagine if you had, 20, 30 more people in that similar state. How safe is that? And is that fair to the healthcare system? I really don't think so. So if he could expand on that, I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, Erin, thank you very much. Is there capacity to be able to bring people to these facilities?
Yeah, and Erin, that's a very good point, and that's one of the reasons why we've given our staff the opportunity to go out, touch base with the key agencies, the RCMP, Interior Health, a number of other agencies, just to ensure that they're not surprised by what we're doing. We recognize the inherent challenges, and we appreciate what the frontline first responders and what doctors and nurses do for our communities and for the province. We cherish it, but we need to do this in consultation. We already have in place, and the police already have the right now to take somebody to the hospital and ask them for an involuntary check. We're just double downing on that. We need this to happen. We need to get people off of the streets that need this help. And that's why we're pushing it to the point where we are right now. We have a fire every single day in our community. People have been attacked in our community. Businesses have been broken into. A law firm, Michelle, was just broken into 2 days ago. And the two people were unhoused. They were arrested, put into jail, and let go the very next day.
I guess the concern there, you're right. And we've heard now about housing, about lack of capacity in the healthcare system. Those seem to be more the root causes that would get to this. Like, do you not risk further just marginalizing people who are suffering as a result of those lack of resources? You know, we've heard already from the chief of the Hatzel First Nation saying we stand firmly against these measures. They could cause disproportionate harm. They pose disproportionate harm to Indigenous people. They risk further marginalizing and criminalizing all people in our city who are struggling with poverty, trauma, addiction, or mental health challenges. So what are you proposing that would get to those root causes as opposed to a clean sweep, as you've been calling it?
Well, I think our community over the last 20 years has supported every initiative that has come down from any given agency, from the provincial government, from the federal government, from our own social services committees within our community as well, our safety committees as well. We have endorsed every single plan. So there's not a single plan that we haven't said, let's try it. What we do know today, what we clearly understand is that there are people on our streets that need to be in the facilities because they can't look after themselves. They are a danger to themselves. They are a danger to society. We have rules and we have laws now that will allow us to be able to put these people into the hospital and under a doctor can have a psychiatric evaluation. And if they determine that this person should not be released and they should be put into involuntary care, that's what we're supporting. That's what we're asking for. Before somebody else gets hurt or there's another crazy accident that takes place, we need to get on top of this now. People are concerned for their safety in their own communities. And by putting long-term goals in place, I support, but when as much activity is taking place right now and there's a fire a day, you can rest assured there's going to be another serious accident that's going to happen. And all we're trying to do is butt it up sooner than later.
Craig wrote us an email. The councillor is explaining what sounds very much like a slow-moving riot. Fires, violence, damage to property, and heightened mental state for people doing it. A state of emergency is put into place for riots. This is just a slow-moving one. Thanks for the email. And Scott Nelson, thank you so much for your time, councillor.
Thank you very much.
Scott Nelson is a Williams Lake City Councillor. It is now 12:28. You're with BC Today. Now, in federal and international news, the U.S. White House says it will appeal a court ruling that strikes down large parts of President Donald Trump's tariffs. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruled yesterday that Trump did not have the authority to impose so-called reciprocal tariffs. This morning, Prime Minister Mark Carney said he welcomed the decision. Meanwhile, business groups are still scrambling to understand what the ruling will mean for them. Matthew Holmes is with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
This probably kicks the can down the road a little bit, and there's certainly still impact for steel, aluminum, and autos. They're under the 232 section of a different act, and so those particular sectors are still feeling the full brunt of the tariff impact, and they're the same, in large part, the same sectors that felt this under the first presidency, under President Donald Trump. The uncertainty for the business community is still there. We're, in one respect, happy to see this validation from the courts that this is a congressional authority. But at the end of the day, what we need is a deal. We need Canada and the U.S. and possibly Mexico to be working on something that everybody will abide by. And that's an important caveat to that deal, because we've had a couple of deals and this administration has ripped them up in the past.
This is BC Today here on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming as well. I'm Michelle Eliot. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. And coming up in our next half hour, we are going to talk first about public washrooms, and the city of Vancouver is taking steps to build more accessible public washrooms. I'm going to talk to Vancouver City Councillor Pete Fry about that, and he put forward the motion. But we're asking you, do BC cities need more public accessible washrooms? And how important is that? They talk about the need for them to respect human dignity and safety and cleanliness. So we're going to talk about that just about 10 minutes from now. And before that, we are going to hear from someone who was seriously injured at the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival a month ago now. And she is someone who performed on that day and was injured and spent 10 days in hospital, now home recovering, but faces a long road ahead. We're going to hear my conversation with her at her home that we had yesterday. And that's all coming up in our next half hour, right after this CBC News Update. And here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The provincial government is once again defending controversial Bill 15, which will speed up public and private infrastructure projects. It passed third and final reading by a 47-46 vote last night, with the Speaker casting the deciding vote. The bill has faced weeks of criticism from Indigenous groups, municipal officials, environmentalists, and some business leaders. The investigation continues into the accident near the Horseshoe Bay Ferry Terminal that left a 4-year-old boy dead and his mother in critical condition. They were struck by a transit bus yesterday afternoon. A friend of the mother's was also hit and is in stable condition. And Forest Minister Ravi Parmar says the province has sent more than 50 firefighters to Manitoba, providing relief for crews sent earlier this month. He says he's glad BC is in a position to be able to support other provinces. Parmar says the BC Wildfire Service also has 100 firefighters in Ontario, and he says BC has also received a request from Saskatchewan. And now the forecast on the north coast, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with strong winds and a high of 10, highs reaching 23 with a chance of showers in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a few showers with a high of 14, highs in the mid-20s with showers and a risk of severe thunderstorms in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, you may also see some severe thunderstorms with a high of 23. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, clearing this afternoon, windy in some areas with highs from 15 to 21 inland. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. That is Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Eliot. It is 12:33 now Pacific time. It's been a little more than a month since the tragedy at the Lapu-Lapu Day Filipino Street Festival that left 11 people dead and more wounded. The suspect is scheduled to appear in court tomorrow following a mental fitness assessment to determine if he's fit to stand trial. I spoke with Christy Ann Watkins, who performed as a DJ and helped organize the festival. She suffered multiple injuries, including blunt force trauma and a laceration to her head, a fractured pelvis, and a punctured lung. She spent 10 days in hospital and is now home, facing a long recovery. Her 11-year-old son suffered minor injuries and went home after one day. I spoke with Christiane Watkins at her home yesterday afternoon. I'll preface this with a warning that some of the description may be disturbing. Here's Christiane Watkins describing what happened as she and her son were lined up at a food truck.
And the last thing I remember, I was holding his hand on the right side, and out of nowhere, I didn't see this car, didn't hear this car, nothing, but I was hit from behind. And I remember mentally processing what was happening to me. When I landed on the ground, my body just hurt, and it just hurt to breathe, and I landed on my side. And so I was conscious enough to get onto my back. And then when I rolled on my back, the only thing I saw was the sky. And then I remember hearing that there was a girl that was literally arm's length away from me. And I reached over and I just hear people helping her, and they were saying, "Don't stop doing CPR, she has no pulse. Don't stop doing CPR, she has no pulse." And there was somebody helping me right above me. And so my 11-year-old son, he has shoulder length hair. He also gets mistaken for a girl all the time. So I reached over and I was freaking out. I was like, panicking, and I was begging the person that was above me. I'm like, is this my son? Where's my son? Is this my son? And I was holding this girl's hand, and out of nowhere, perfect timing, a friend of mine, she's like, I have Knox. He's okay. I'm with him. Don't worry about you, kind of thing. And it was just like, what? I had to process what she was telling me, like catching up with what she was saying. And she's like, don't worry. And I just kind of like released it. I am, like I said, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm still here. And things could be a lot worse. Everything moves. I'm still mentally here, for the most part. And I also made a conscious decision early on in my recovery to not dwell on the why me, why did this happen to me. I am not angry. I just it doesn't serve me. I'm not going to get any answers as to why me. It was just not toxic positivity, but understanding that I am lucky. I'm here. I have a second chance with my family, and I'm just going to use this second chance to be present and to just focus on what I do have.
Kirsty Ann Watkins is a DJ who performed and helped organize the Lapu-Lapu Day Street Festival. She was among those injured. Meanwhile, 11 people were killed when a car rammed into a crowd as the festival ended. The accused has been ordered to undergo a mental fitness assessment to determine if he's fit to stand trial and will appear again in court tomorrow. "12:37 now. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining me. And coming up in our next few minutes from now, we're going to talk about public washrooms. But coming up this afternoon on the coast, here's Gloria.
Hi there. Good afternoon. It's Gloria Macarenko here, and I hope you can join us for On the Coast this afternoon. If you've been wondering just what's going on really with the U.S. economy, what is Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill really all about? Well, our guide to personal finance, Mark Ting, is going to be here to take us through some of the details. Also, our Soapbox Social panel, Mo, Amir, and Kyla Lee, they're going to be here with the news of the week. Also, Cenk Uygur is going to be our guest. He is one of the hosts of The Young Turks, the online news commentary show. He's in town for a big tech conference, and he's going to join us here in studio. So I hope you can join us between 3 and 6 for On the Coast.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And again, that's On the Coast. That starts at 3 o'clock on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver. You can also listen anywhere on the CBC News app. "12:39 now. This is BC Today. Well, you may start to see more public washrooms around the city of Vancouver. Last week, City Council approved a motion to look at finding locations and funding for accessible public washrooms. And these would be in high traffic areas, including downtown, close to public transit. We'll talk to Councillor Pete Fry in just a moment. And we'd love to hear from you. Do we need more public washrooms in BC cities? And how does Vancouver compare with other major cities around the world when it comes to public washrooms? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 on your cell phone, pound 690. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And Green Party Councillor Pete Fry joins me now. Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
I do. I'm cognizant of the fact we're talking about washrooms during the lunch hour. So just putting that out there now.
Well, actually, I'm in Ottawa right now, so it's not lunch hour for me.
You've had
So,
lunch. Okay, so you're good to
Yeah.
go. But just keeping that in mind. But however, this is an important issue, isn't it? I mean, why did you want to focus on public washrooms?
I mean, it's been an ongoing issue, and I know we even struggled with this back during the Olympics, and we looked at how we could create temporary urinals and alleys and facilitate the sort of need for washrooms with large events. But certainly in the last few years, and especially post-COVID, we've seen the lack of washrooms have a real impact on street cleanliness. We've seen the rise in antibiotic-resistant forms of dysentery in the city of Vancouver, which is a pretty significant health risk. And for quite a while, the city has looked towards senior governments to fund washroom strategies, and indeed they have, but some of that funding's run out. And we do have an obligation under the Vancouver Charter to prevent insanitary conditions in the city of Vancouver. And I think most would argue that the lack of washrooms is contributing to insanitary conditions. And furthermore, of course, public washrooms are something of benefit to anybody who has biological functions. And so having accessible public washrooms is a benefit for people with disabilities, for people with children, for tourists and visitors to our city, to elderly people, really to everyone. And we know that there's a distinct and really defined need in the unhoused population. So a lot of the public washrooms that are available are only available during limited hours. So in parks and communities centers, for instance, they're not open in the evenings, and biological functions don't operate in that sort of daytime, evening time schedule. So when people need to go, they need to go. And we, I think, have a responsibility to ensure that we are doing a better job to facilitate that.
Yeah, certainly vulnerable populations, including those who are unhoused. There's a need there. Seems to be different populations that all, as you say, anyone who has biological needs need public washrooms. For people who are tourists or residents, we know what happens, right? They can't find a public washroom. They try to find a coffee shop or a restaurant around. What's been the effect of that? The lack of public washrooms and then turning to private establishments.
Well, obviously that's a burden on private establishments, and a lot of private establishments don't provide that as a free service. So there's an obligation for you to purchase something to use their washroom, which may be fine if you're a traveler and you're a tourist and you've got extra money to spend on a sandwich or whatever it is that you need to get access. But obviously for folks who maybe don't need a sandwich or don't have money for a sandwich, it presents a barrier. And I think that's, again, we need those sort of third spaces that are accessible to everyone. And certainly, traveling around other jurisdictions, I don't know about the situation here in Ottawa, but I've been to many cities that public washrooms are a vital and really expected part of the urban landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just in Japan, where they were incredibly accessible and readily available and very clean. So that was something that came to mind for me when I heard about this motion. Councillor Pete Fry is with me, and we're talking about steps that the City of Vancouver is taking to get funding and find locations for more public washrooms that are accessible. And so we're asking you, do BC cities need more accessible public washrooms? And how do you compare what you see in your own city with other major cities around the world? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And Jack is calling us from nearby Burnaby. Hi, Jack.
Hello.
Hi, what are your thoughts on access to public washrooms?
It sure would be nice. It's quite uncivilized and absurd that there are no public washrooms pretty much anywhere in Vancouver or BC, period. When you're over 60 and you have to go way more often than younger people, like one relative of mine has to go every 30 minutes. So you can't buy a sandwich every 30 minutes.
No.
And my relative's female, so they can't do what a lot of men do, step in the alley behind a dumpster is the only choice if you can't find somewhere. And you got literally 1 minute and you got to go.
Yeah, and you get to, the health issue and certainly seniors as well as we look at an aging population, Jack?
Oh yeah, well, men with the prostate problems. I'm over 60, and a lot of my friends, it's a big joke. You got to go quite often, and the only options really have been McDonald's and Tim Hortons, like the fast food joints. The restaurants won't let you in.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point there when it comes to people, what role aging plays as well and what people need as they age. Jack, thank you so much. Good to hear from you in Burnaby. Damien is calling us now from the island. Hi, Damien.
Hi there.
Hi. What do you think? Do BC cities need more public washrooms?
I'd like to point out the perspective of when I was working in downtown Vancouver as a garbage truck driver. During COVID in 2020, when the city decided that all the washrooms were going to close, there was only one place for people to go, and that's right where I had to work. The back alleys between all the dumpsters. So anytime you close a washroom in a metropolitan area, human beings are human beings. They're going to go anyway. So either you deal with it properly or deal with it by power washing the alleys. I don't know what they do, but it's the reason I left the industry. It got so bad during COVID that I walked away from that job, and I do something else now. So.
Wow. I can't imagine what you saw, Damien. Thank you very much for raising that point too. And go ahead, Damien.
Oh, I've tried everything to get the city to work. Like, I used to take pictures and send them directly to the mayor.
Yeah.
And, never got any reply, but I least, how would you like it if you had to work here? But no reply. They don't do anything about it. It's like living in a third world country, especially when you got to work down there.
Have you heard from...
That's only one of the issues in those alleys, right? There's more than one issue down in those alleys.
Sure. Have you, and was this something that you and your colleagues talked about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big problem in the industry. Like, it's one thing to step in dog poop, but when you step in human poop, it's a whole other kind of bad day.
Oh, dear. Damien, really good to hear from you, and that's certainly something that it caused you to actually leave your job. That's Damien from Vancouver Island. And Councillor Fry, that the pandemic, you talked about what we've learned since COVID because public washrooms did have to close at the time. What have been the lessons learned there?
Well, one of the big challenges we also saw during the pandemic and what exists as a challenge is our public washrooms, do they need to be monitored so that people aren't overdosing in public washrooms because there's nowhere else for them to go? That is a real challenge and a real problem. So it's something that we did learn. And obviously during the pandemic, we had to worry about, at the time, we were more concerned about fomites and transmission of COVID through touching surfaces. Obviously, we know now that it was more of an airborne consideration, but still establishing that cleanliness. And that is one of the challenges with public washrooms as well is maintenance. So cleanliness in public washrooms, unfortunately, I've also been to Japan. In Japan, there's a big cultural difference in how people treat public amenities like washrooms. Here, North Americans tend to trash them. And especially, certain populations really don't do right by public washrooms, and so we end up seeing them, with things stuffed down the drain and ruin the plumbing, or just vandalized with no real sort of regard for other people who may actually need to use them. So that is one of the challenges we see with funding public washrooms and why the cities traditionally look to senior levels of government. But there's something else I want to just touch on, and that comes up in many of the comments that your callers mentioned, and what I hear from public as well is it's also about dignity. I mean, the fact that people are having to go to the washroom in a back alley and go behind a dumpster and stuff, and if you're an older person who has to go and you're faced with the horrible decision of like, where are you going to go? And the stress and the anxiety that comes with that, it's really about human dignity. And I think, it is a fundamental basic function. And interestingly, in the motion, I talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which look at how we can lift up, what we call third world countries, and I put that in air quotes. But how do we enable developing countries to have, better standards of living? And one of the very top ones is access to fresh water and sanitation. And in many parts of our city, we're missing that altogether.
Yeah. And when you talk about people who are unhoused, what are the specific needs there? I wonder if there are things like showers and things like that could be added.
Yeah, for sure. Running water. It's one thing to have the toilet, but you also have to wash your hands. So that kind of access. But really, it has to be utilitarian enough that it can't get destroyed and that it can be cleaned. So we know with some of the porta potties, we did install a number of porta potties during COVID, and people would smoke in them and leave a cigarette and burn the whole thing down. So, because they're made of plastic. So there are newer, more expensive toilets like the Portland Loo that was developed in Portland, Oregon, that is stainless steel, has lots of sort of viewpoints so that you can ensure that people aren't overdosing and dying in there, but you can also pressure wash it and clean it out very readily and quite easily. And those are the sort of considerations I think that we need to look at for certain types of public washrooms in certain parts of the city. But again, the direction to staff is to figure out what we need where. And one of the big asks too is of TransLink. So again, going back to the Japan experience, Japan has a wonderful network of very fast public transit, and every train station, as you know, has washrooms and lockers where you can, go do your shopping, store your stuff in a locker, come back, get it. It's a way of embracing like a car light reality as well, because this enables people to move around by transit and not have to rely on a personal vehicle to store their stuff, and also so they can get out of there and find a washroom.
A lot of people want to comment on this. We have another caller now, Joseph in White Rock. Hi there. What are your thoughts? Do BC cities need more public washrooms?
Absolutely. I'm echoing a lot of what you just said about Japan. You go to Europe, it's just, like you said, every train station, every transit place has a washroom, but they're monitored. They actually have a person who, it's a job, and you can tip them, right? But you don't have to. And they're fantastic. The bathrooms, you could eat off the floors. And they have one for one function and one for another, so you choose. And yeah, they're monitored and they have people. Okay. And they do, like you said, there's storage lockers and all that. But I'm shocked to hear there's dysentery in Vancouver. That blows my mind. But, regarding what you said about discrimination against homeless people, right now I'm wearing a pair of jeans and a shirt. If I put on a jacket right now, I could walk in the Vancouver hotel, and these are facilities no one would look twice. But if I wasn't and I looked a little more rough, I'm sure I couldn't do that. And that's, again, unfair. I just don't. I honestly believe there should be washrooms everywhere. You should be able to get one practically on every corner, because not just for people that aren't living rough, but especially for those who are, because we feed them, so we should help them out otherwise, right?
Yeah. Joseph, thank you so much for the call. David is in North Vancouver. Do we need more public washrooms, David? And where?
Yes, Michelle, I have to agree. When you said you just come back from Japan, you saw it for yourself. It's an amazing thing that every train station you go into, every transit place has multiple washrooms. They've got heated toilet seats in every single one, which is amazing. That everybody should travel to Japan. And we brought back a heated toilet seat and installed it in our house. It's something else. But yeah, all of our TransLink stations need to have washrooms. My wife is Japanese, and she's hesitant to use the SkyTrain just because of that fact. And in Japan, even when I was teaching English for a year over there, you realize that all the convenience stores like 7-Eleven, Lawson, and all that stuff, they're all accessible washrooms at the back of the store. You don't have to buy anything in the store. You wander to the back, you go into the washroom, you use it. Once again, it's a heated toilet seat that washes your behind. And it's all free. And it's, I'm not saying we have to have that in Canada, but we need to do something at the SkyTrain stations for sure.
David, thank you so much. The issue of transit, that's going to be part of this discussion as well. Mateo is in Victoria wanting to talk about public transit as well and accessibility of washrooms. Hi there, Mateo.
Hello. Yeah, I traveled to Vancouver, and knowing where to use a bathroom when exchanging from the ferry to the bus to Richmond and the SkyTrain, you have to know where, like even at the River Rock Casino, you need to be an adult to walk into the casino now to go to their bathroom.
Yeah.
And with the intercity buses from Victoria to Nanaimo, we need places in all the cities for especially like when it's so city-centric with Victoria and the Lower Mainland. We need to think of our smaller communities. And the points about security in public washrooms, especially if we're placing them in northern and remote and rural cities.
That's a really good point, Mateo. Yeah, thank you so much. And you may not have the urban density, but it may make it harder for residents there as well because things are farther, you have to travel farther to get anywhere. Councillor Fry, so that's that question of, okay, you can build them, but how do you plan to maintain them? You talked about monitoring. You know, how much is this going to cost? Is that feasible?
Well, I mean, I think it costs money for sure, but I think the cost of inaction. I mean, shigellosis, which is the bacteria that causes dysentery, it's easily transferred through touching items like, I don't know, bus handles, doorknobs, that kind of thing. So it is something that actually has a greater potential public health risk. And again, if we're talking about antibiotic-resistant strains, we probably, and this is probably why places like Europe are really far ahead on public washrooms, because they've experienced what happens with insanitary conditions and widespread diseases in the public. And I think Mateo had an excellent point about, like, when you're coming into the city, like the fact that you would need to know where the washrooms are and consult a map also presents a bit of an accessibility barrier. If you're not comfortable using a cell phone or know how to use a cell phone, or if you don't have access to a cell phone, how do you find the map of where the nearest public washroom is? We should be making them more accessible. And not to talk about how great Japanese washrooms are again, but a friend of my wife had just come back from Japan and used as a colostomy bag and was overwhelmed to find that the Japanese washrooms, public washrooms, are indeed accessible to the point that they have facilities for people with colostomy bags and a variety of different needs in public washrooms, which to me is a highly evolved approach that, again, imparts that dignity to people who are using our cities. And I think that's an important thing.
I also note that, yes, there is a privilege to having been to Japan. So just putting that out there. But that's an example for sure for people with various needs. Councillor Fry, it's a really good conversation. I'm so glad that you joined us for this. Thank you.
Well, Michelle, I'm glad you're putting the conversation out there, because I think it is something that we need to push for. And TransLink needs to be at the table. And it's an important thing.
You have a good time in Ottawa.
Thanks.
That's Green Party Councillor Pete Fry.